And so it is, beloved masters. Death and living. And many might ask, and why not say living and death? Because in these times, it is that there is a passing away of many things that have been connected to an order that really was not that much about living. It was about existence. It was about struggle. It was about sacrifice. And yes, there was a mention of living, but so many felt as though they were not. And now, with this intensive Plutonian energy with which this year, 2014, started off with 1, 2, and in June, 3 complete, total grand crosses of Pluto opposing Jupiter and Uranus opposing Mars. And it is that Pluto is beginnings and endings. It is death and birth, rebirth. And it is that Uranus is all about the chaotic upheaval that comes with the change of an order. That everything that you have known is changing. And people are feeling this energy, and it feels like death to many. It feels as though death is stalking them. It feels as though the fear that they are experiencing could cause them to die, or that they are dying of fright, even though they're walking around. Now, Mars is in the sign of Libra, relationships. And because Libra is all about harmony, peacefulness, cooperation, and Mars is the warrior, the lower octave of Pluto. It is that relationships are being, if you would, torn apart and resurrected. So how humanity has related to each other is changing. You're moving from separation into unification. And we talk quite frequently about blending, where the nature of Pluto is totally either or, one way or the other, no middle ground. It is that the unification is calling for blending. Blending of every extreme that you can think of. So we have chosen to present this topic of death and living on a full moon. Sun in the sign of Taurus, the earth upon which you live, and all of her bounty, her riches, your value that you have not really been educated to consider in lifetimes. And so the healing and mending of value, to feel worthy,
muted.
to feel clear that you have value. And it is, beloved masters, the moon in Scorpio, the sign that Pluto rules, going into the very depths of yourself, into Hades, hell, the dark places, the buried treasure. And many would say, but yes, it is a place of death. And yet, in divine creation, there is no ending without a beginning. Always something new emerges from the old. Phoenix arising from the ashes. So even the process that has been called death is changing. And consequently, it's getting a lot of press now in these times. There are massive experiences where large numbers of people pass from the planet. And then there are catastrophes where not one single soul is lost. And so it is. What is death, really? It has been considered in separation a way to get out of the chaos that separation has created. So you are born, you experience a few years on the ball, and then you die. And there are souls that believe that that's it. There are some that actually believe that you only get one chance. I am here to assure you, beloved masters, that what appears to be an ending is really a birth into a higher dimensional frequency. And up until these times, the fact that as one moved into a higher dimensional frequency, they disappeared from the planet. When someone experienced death, then their life force left the physical form that they were inhabiting, and those that were left behind were confronted with the experience of disposing of the physical matter. But it is, beloved masters, in the beginning, before separation became such a powerful force, when you really remembered who you are. You would come with a soul script as you do now, but you would be aware of the soul script, and you would create life experiences dedicated to fulfilling the soul script. And at a point, there would be a realization, a recognition, I have fulfilled what I came for, and the entity would retire very often to their bedchamber. and those that were close would gather around, and there would be a quiet celebration, and the entity would leave and take the body with them. And that was how transition functioned for a long time, until separation became such a point of misunderstanding that humanity forgot, I am that I am. And now, beloved masters, it is time to let go of all the entangled fears and beliefs around the process of death, that it is a terrible thing, that it is a source of sadness, that it is all manner of unpleasantness, and to begin to embrace within yourself. And this, dearly beloved masters, is not a process that can be done logically. The mind hears information such as this, and it either says, I can't accept that, or, all right, I'll do that. And forgiving the entanglement, the fears, the conflicts around death, can only be healed by deeply connecting another Plutonian energy, actually, to enter into the depths of yourself. Allegorically, it could be energetically very much as the Master Jesus being laid in the tomb. To enter into yourself and make transformation. Now, the Master did it in 3 days because he had had lifetimes of preparation and understanding of what the whole process was and what it wasn't. But it is, as you energetically enter into yourself and you allow yourself to connect with the love within you, in many ways it is exactly as I have said, moving into the death process, for many the aging process, and out the other side without death, without the dying, moving through it and making in the process ascension. And the logical, practical mind has, to the extent of its capabilities, figured out how all of this has to work and what you have to do to ascend. And it is, beloved masters, ascension is also not a logic game. It isn't an exercise of who is going to apply what they learned the most proficiently. It isn't who's the smartest. It isn't who is the most religious or the most spiritual. But it is those who are willing to come home to themselves, to let go of the fear of reuniting with you in you. And the egoic mind says, but that is really scary. Reuniting with myself, I don't know what that's about. I don't know who I really am. I don't know what I will find when I come to myself. And of course, the ego is always terrified of endings and frightened of change, because an ending means that something new looms, and change always requires faith. That you have the faith to step into each new situation. And beloved masters, life on the planet in this time is requiring of every soul that you be so flexible, that you be so willing to accept change, and preferably that you will move into a place of allowing faith to be the guiding standard of your life, and as you do, you will begin to feel new life within you. Because faith inspires that sense of joyful enthusiasm, of optimism, of the acceptance of the unconditional, and it moves you beyond all the old cloying darkness, the dead-end considerations that death has held before humanity. And it opens the way to a whole new world, the new earth. And it's inside of you. It exists right now in this moment within you. Surrender to death. And here we get into multitudinous personal interpretations. The Master is telling us to die. No. Surrender isn't a doing thing. If I were telling you to die, then I probably would give you some suggestions about how to go about it. Certainly there have been those prophets throughout time that have said, we'll die as a collective and we'll all, quote unquote, go to heaven together. No one's ever really reported on whether they got there or not. Because this whole process, dearly beloved masters, is so divinely unique, so intimately personal. And yet each one of you that let go of the fear of endings called death, whether it is the death of the physical form or whether it is the death of the way you have lived your life for so long. when you can surrender to the change in hopeful optimism, in joyful enthusiasm, to embrace new good, and to allow the changes, which, yes, from time to time, will definitely feel uncomfortable. But in truth, beloved masters, there is no loss in God, in good. There is the necessity in these times to let go of everything that no longer serves you. How Plutonian. Saturn has been called the Grim Reaper, but it is that Pluto has been the planet most associated with death and rebirth. And it is that there really is no horrible skeletal force that is going to go across the planet and bring death to those that aren't worthy. The fear of death and all of the considerations of what death is about, what it can bring, how painful it might be, will certainly, potentially, come home to those that are pondering them quicker in the energy of these times, because the time-space continuum is breaking apart with the illusions of separation. And therefore, in real time, you live much more now. Separation had a lag time. So whether you were pondering something wonderful or whether you were pondering something terrible, a lot of times the two-headed dragon of the ego would go back and forth so much that energetically you would neutralize outcomes. But in real time, where you put your focus is where the energy of your creativity is going to flow. Worry, doubt, fear, anger, and certainly rage are elements that can bring down the finest of creation. So you may have been focusing on something wonderful and about to bring it into reality, and then you start focusing on what if, and yes, but. And it is, beloved masters, do consider when the ego wants to move your thoughts in those old places of pondering worst possible outcomes, that you very quickly move yourself to your center in love. Feel the love, feel the hope, feel the joy, feel the promise of faith, rather than pondering the potentials of death in whatever form it might take.